The private room on the 8th floor of Hotel Vermont was set for 12. The candles had been lit for 40 minutes. Eleanor Whitfield sat at the head of the table in her chair, her phone face down on the white cloth. The last message from her brother had come an hour ago. Plattsburgh plant emergency. Whole board pulled in. Rain check. Ellie. After that, the messages from the others had arrived in clusters, then thinned, then stopped. She reached out and snuffed one candle between her fingers, then the second. Someone knocked. If you've ever waited at a table that no one came to, you already know how the next part begins. Stay with it. The door opened halfway. A man in a gray work shirt stood at the threshold with a toolbox in one hand and a clipboard in the other. He looked at the table first, then at her, then at the ceiling vent above the buffet cart. He apologized, said the front desk had sent him up to the adjoining suite for a temperature complaint, and that the two rooms shared a return duct on the same control loop. He hadn't realized the dividing door was unlocked on her side. He kept his voice low, the way a person speaks in a hospital room. Eleanor said nothing for a moment. She watched him take in the 12-place settings, the untouched bread baskets, the cake under its glass dome, the cluster of unopened wine. He didn't look away quickly the way people did. He didn't soften his face. He just nodded once at the vent above her head, the way a man might nod at a problem he could solve, and said he'd work next door for about 30 minutes if she didn't mind the sound of a screwdriver through the wall. She told him she didn't mind. He left the door between the rooms cracked an inch. She could hear him working. The sound was steady and small. The click of a panel released from its mount, the whir of a flow meter, the occasional low voice as he spoke to someone on the radio clipped to his belt. He was checking a static pressure reading. He gave numbers that meant nothing to her. The numbers comforted her anyway. They belonged to a world in which problems had causes and causes had solutions. After 20 minutes, he came back through with a paper cup of warm water from the pantry station and set it on the table near her right hand. He said the room was running dry from the vent fault and that she hadn't had anything in 40 minutes. He said it the way a man states a fact about a building, not a woman. He went back to work. She drank the water in slow, even sips and listened to him put the panel back. When he was done, he closed his toolbox, came through one more time, and said goodnight. He didn't say happy birthday. He didn't look at the cake. He simply pulled the door behind him until it caught. Eleanor sat at the table until the candles burned themselves down into puddles. She drank the last of the water. Then she lifted her phone and called her driver and told him to bring the car around to the side entrance, not the front. She did not want to be carried down the front steps by the doorman tonight. She did not want to be looked at. On the way home, she watched the lights of Burlington slide past the window and did not cry because she had learned 3 years ago that crying in a car solved nothing and ruined her makeup before any of the cameras she still had to face the next morning. She thought about the man with the gray shirt. He had not asked her what was wrong. He had not offered to call anyone. He had given her a cup of water and gone back to work, and somehow that had been the only thing all evening that had not made her feel smaller. She made a note on her phone before she fell asleep. 3 words. Find his name. The next morning, Patricia Cole brought the file at 8. Daniel Hawthorne, 40, subcontractor through Green Mountain Facilities, assigned to Whitfield Tower for the past 8 months. Clean record. A reference letter from a property management firm in Stowe. Daughter listed as Lily, age 8. Wife deceased 2 years prior. Address in a small town 20 minutes north along the lake. Eleanor read the file twice. Then she took the elevator down to the basement. She found him in the mechanical room behind a panel of copper pipe, sleeves rolled to the elbow, a thermal camera in his hand. He did not startle when she came in. He turned the camera off and set it on the bench like a man setting down a coffee cup. Mr. Hawthorne. Ma'am, you didn't say anything last night. You didn't need me to say anything. She studied him. He was lean in the way men who had worked with their hands were lean, with the kind of stillness that came from spending hours alone with machinery. There was a wedding ring on his left hand, worn thin at the back. His hair was going gray at the temples. He met her eyes evenly and without curiosity. What did you do before this? She said. He took a moment. The bench light was on behind him and threw his face into half shadow. Engineering. Adaptive systems. That's a broad field. Seating. Mobility. Power assist. He said it without elaboration, the way a man names a town he no longer lives in. She did not push. She thanked him for the water and rode the elevator back up. In her office, she pulled up the United States Patent Office database and typed his name. 3 patents came back: 9,847,221, 10,112,664, 10,558,903. All 3 listed Daniel R. Hawthorne as the inventor. All 3 covered the foundational tilt and recline geometry used in the chair she was sitting in. She knew the geometry because her own engineers had walked her through it the week the chair was delivered, when she had still been learning what her body could and could not do. She called the company's general counsel and asked one question. He answered in 2 minutes. Hawthorne Adaptive Systems, the licensor for 64% of Whitfield's adaptive division, had been co-founded by Daniel Hawthorne. He had sold his operating share 2 years ago and left the company. The reason listed in the public filing was personal. The patents had remained in the company's name. He had walked away from the royalty stream. Eleanor closed the laptop. She sat for a long time looking at the lake. A ferry was crossing toward the New York shore, slow against a gray wind. She did not tell anyone what she had found. She locked the patent printouts in the bottom drawer of her desk and went to her 1 o'clock meeting. That afternoon she rode the elevator down to the basement with 2 paper cups of coffee. She found him at the same bench. She set 1 cup on the corner of his toolbox and did not say why she had come back. He picked it up and thanked her. The compressor in the corner cycled on with a low thump. They drank their coffee standing 6 feet apart and did not speak for almost a minute. She watched him watch the gauge on the wall, and she understood that he was waiting for the cycle to finish before he said anything else, because he was that kind of careful. Then she rode back up. Marcus came to her office without an appointment the next morning. He was wearing the navy suit he wore when he wanted to be taken seriously, and the expression he wore when he wanted to be taken as family. He sat across from her in the chair their father had bought 30 years ago and crossed his legs the way their father used to cross them. Ellie. Marcus. I heard there was a stranger at your dinner. The word stranger came out soft, the way a knife comes out of a drawer. She did not look up from her screen for a beat longer than was polite. When she did look up, she let him wait another beat before she answered. The whole board missed the dinner, Marcus. But you came here to ask me about a maintenance tech. I came to ask if you're all right. I'm all right. The Plattsburgh thing was real. Conveyor failure. I would have come, Ellie. You know I would have come. I know. She did not know. They both knew she did not know. He let it sit. He looked around the office at the framed engineering schematic of the original Whitfield turbine housing, the one their father had drafted by hand in 1968. He looked at it the way a man inventories furniture before a move. There's a board meeting in 3 weeks, he said. Ridgway wants a candid conversation about structural questions, representation, market perception. The accounts are asking how we present in a moving market. He let the word present hang in the air. She held his eyes until he looked away first. Put it on my calendar, she said. Through Patricia. He stood, smoothed his tie, and let himself out. He had been her older brother for 43 years, and he had been afraid of her for exactly 40 seconds, somewhere in the middle of the conversation, and they had both noticed. He closed the door behind him a quarter-inch harder than he had meant to. Eleanor sat at her desk for a long time after he left. She looked at the schematic on the wall, the turbine housing their father had drawn the year before Marcus was born. The pencil lines had faded under the glass. She remembered her father standing at the kitchen counter with a roll of tracing paper, explaining to her at 7 years old how a bearing carried load, and she remembered Marcus rolling his eyes from the doorway, because he had already heard the lecture twice that week. She remembered which child their father had taught the math to, and which child he had taught to smile for the camera. She remembered, and she did not let the memory soften what she had just heard in her office. After a while, Patricia came in and closed the door. Marcus pulled your file on Daniel Hawthorne from HR an hour before he came up here, she said. I don't know why. Eleanor opened a fresh work order on her screen. Accessibility audit. 8th floor and executive level. Lead technician Daniel Hawthorne. Scope to include doors, transition surfaces, conference room furniture, and thermal balancing. Budget $4,800, just below the threshold that required COO sign-off. She typed it cleanly and submitted it under her own signature. Patricia watched her finish. Patricia. Yes. How long have you worked for me? 14 years. 16 if you count your father. Have I ever made a decision without telling Marcus first? Patricia thought about it the way she thought about everything, which was for exactly as long as the question deserved. Not since the accident. Then make a note of the date. Patricia made the note. She did not smile, but something in her face moved that had not moved in a long time, and she carried it back to her own desk and held it there. The following Monday, Eleanor took the elevator to the basement again. The work order gave her a reason, but she did not need one anymore, and she knew it. The maintenance office was a long, narrow room with concrete walls and a folding table at one end under a fluorescent strip light. A small girl sat at the table doing homework. She had a notebook open beside her math worksheet, and the notebook was full of careful drawings of birds, each one labeled in a child's slow handwriting. Cardinal, junco, white-breasted nuthatch, the kind of birds that came to feeders in October. Eleanor stopped in the doorway. The girl looked up without surprise. You're the lady from the dinner. I am. My dad said you might come down here sometime. Eleanor wheeled in a little farther. There was a small jelly jar on the table holding a few stems of pink cosmos, the kind that grew along the roadsides outside town through the first hard frost. The girl had her hair in 2 braids, and her shoes off, and her feet hooked around the chair legs. Did you pick those? Eleanor said, on the way home from school. They're the last ones. There won't be any more until July. What's your name? Lily. Lily, do you like cosmos? They're not pretty exactly, but they're hard to kill. My mom said that was better than pretty. Eleanor did not answer right away. She looked at the cosmos, and then at the bird notebook, and then at the small, serious face of the child. And she thought about her own mother, who had died when she was 12, and she thought about how no one had said anything as honest to her in 3 years. What does your dad say about them? Eleanor asked, because she did not trust her voice for the longer question. He says they grow where nothing else will. He says that's a kind of being beautiful, but it takes longer to see. The door at the back of the office opened and Daniel came in carrying a roll of drafting paper. He stopped when he saw Eleanor. He did not apologize for his daughter being there. He did not send her away. He set the roll on the table and unrolled it across the math worksheet, and Lily, without being told, weighted the corners with 2 coffee mugs and her math eraser. It was a hand drawing of the lobby ramp, the one Eleanor used every morning to reach the elevator from the side entrance. He had measured every gradient on it in pencil, in tenths of degrees. There was a red circle near the second landing, and a notation beside it. Your back right caster slips here, he said. 2 degrees off code. Wet weather makes it worse. I thought it was the chair when I watched you come in last Tuesday. It's the ramp. The pour cured uneven when they laid it. Easy to miss. I thought it was me, Eleanor said, before she could stop herself. He did not look up from the drawing. It's not you. It's the ramp. She took the drawing. She did not thank him. She rolled it up carefully and tucked it against the side of her chair and rode back up to the 8th floor with it across her lap. That night, in her apartment above the lake, she put the drawing flat on the kitchen counter and looked at it for a long time. Then she set the small jelly jar of cosmos Lily had pressed into her hand on the way out next to it. She poured a glass of wine and did not drink it. She sat in the dark and listened to the heater come on and thought about a man who looked at her chair the way other men looked at engines. She did not call her brother back. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel worked the audit. He did not announce what he was doing. He did not email reports. He fixed things and moved on. The brass round knob on the boardroom door came off and was replaced with a lever handle, the kind a person could open with a closed fist or a wrist. The conference table was lowered by 1.5 inches on hidden adjustable feet she had not known were there. The threshold strip between the executive corridor and the boardroom, a metal plate that had caught her front casters every time she crossed it for 3 years, was ground flush with the floor and refinished. A loose tile in the corridor outside her office, the one that had clicked under her right wheel every morning, went quiet. The thermostat in her office, which had always run cold because the vent above her desk blew straight down on her shoulders, was rebalanced, so the air moved across the ceiling first and warmed before it reached her. She noticed the changes one by one. She noticed that she was noticing. She started keeping a small list in her phone, not to thank him but to be honest with herself about what had been broken for 3 years and what had not been her body. She passed him in the elevator on a Thursday afternoon. They rode down together, 4 floors, in silence. He stood at the back of the car. She sat near the front. When the doors opened, he reached out and held the open button without looking at her. And she rolled past him into the lobby, and she could smell the lake on his jacket, because he had walked back from the parking lot through the cold. The doors closed behind her, and she realized she was smiling at the dark elevator panel, and that there was no one to see it, and that this made it the first honest smile she had given anyone in a long time. She wheeled out under the lobby skylight, and stopped for a moment in the slant of late afternoon light, and listened to the building settle around her. The new lever handle on the boardroom door, 2 floors up, made a different sound from the old knob when it opened. She had learned to hear it. That evening Marcus called her at home. He used his warm voice, the voice he had used when she was 9, and had broken their mother's lamp, and he had told her to go upstairs while he handled it. "Ellie, listen. People on the board are worried about you. Ridgway's been calling. The accounts are asking questions. We need to sit down before the meeting. Just the 2 of us. Dinner at the house. Diane will cook. Put it on the calendar through Patricia." "Ellie, it's me, through Patricia." She ended the call and sat in her dark living room with the lights off, and looked at the small jelly jar of cosmos she had moved to the windowsill. The flowers had dried in place, holding their pink against the cold glass. She thought about how the only person in 3 years who had told her something was broken, and that it was not her, had been a man who fixed buildings for a living. And she thought about how the only person in 3 years who had said her mother's word, beautiful, in a way that did not sound like a lie, had been an 8-year-old in 2 braids. On Monday morning, Patricia came in, closed the door behind her, and turned the lock. She set a manila envelope on the desk. Her hand was steady, but her mouth was not. "I should have given this to you 4 months ago," she said. Eleanor opened the envelope. Inside were printouts of signal messages, 41 pages. The thread was Marcus and 8 of the 11 board members, going back 6 weeks. There was a photograph of a dinner receipt from the Hotel Vermont restaurant, dated the 23rd of October, time-stamped 7:42 p.m., table for 3, signed by Marcus Whitfield in blue ink. The receipt had been folded inside a maintenance work ticket. The work ticket had Daniel's signature on the bottom. Eleanor read the messages slowly. There was one line near the middle she read 3 times. "Let her sit alone that night. I want her to understand she has no one. The vote will be easier after." She set the page down. The radiator in the corner clicked once. "Patricia, how did you get the receipt?" "I didn't." He left it in the kitchen file room with the catering invoices from that week. He thought no one looked there. Daniel saw Marcus in the restaurant lobby at the hotel that night, on his way out from the HVAC call. He filed the work ticket the next morning at our front desk because it was a Whitfield billed job, and he clipped the receipt to it so the accounting would match. He didn't say anything to anyone about what it meant. I found it 3 weeks later when I was reconciling the October catering bill. "And you kept it?" "I kept it." Patricia set her hand flat on the desk. Her wedding ring caught the desk lamp. "My husband died in June. The hospital debt was cleared from the life insurance in August. Marcus stopped being able to hold anything over me 3 months ago, and I still kept it for 3 months, because I'm 58, and I have never looked for another job in my life, and I was afraid. I am telling you now because I watched you go down to the basement twice in one day 3 weeks ago, and come back different. I watched you submit a work order without his approval. I watched you stop calling him back. And I decided that if I let him take this company from you, I would not be able to live with myself for whatever time I had left." Eleanor reached across the desk and put her hand on top of Patricia's and held it there for 10 seconds. Then she picked up the desk phone and dialed an outside number she had written down on the back of a business card 3 weeks earlier and not used. "Mr. Hawthorne, it's Eleanor Whitfield. Do you have time this afternoon? I need a non-legal opinion." He came at 3. He sat across from her in the chair Marcus had sat in 3 weeks before, and he read the file. He read it slowly, the way he had read the ramp drawing, taking each page in order and not skipping ahead. When he was done, he set the stack down and aligned the edges with the side of the desk. "You don't need my opinion," he said. "You need to know you aren't alone in that room next Thursday. Would you come into the room? If you ask me, I'm asking you." He nodded once. Then he asked if he could see Patricia's photograph of the receipt again, and Patricia handed it to him, and he looked at the timestamp and the signature and the table number, and he said quietly that he had stood about 15 feet from that table on his way out of the hotel that night. and that Marcus had not looked up from his menu. He had recognized Marcus from the corporate photograph in the lobby of Whitfield Tower. He had not known the woman in the private room upstairs was Marcus's sister until the next morning when Patricia had come down to the maintenance office to ask about the work ticket. The boardroom on Thursday morning held 11 directors and a long oval table polished to the color of dark honey. Eleanor sat at the head. Marcus sat at the far end. Patricia sat to Eleanor's right with a yellow legal pad for the minutes. The eighth chair on the right side, the one closest to Eleanor, was empty. Marcus opened with what he called a candid conversation about leadership representation in a changing market. He had 3 printed pages in front of him. He had spoken 3 sentences when the door at the back of the room opened, and Daniel walked in. He was wearing his gray work shirt and his work boots. He carried his toolbox. He set the toolbox down on the carpet next to the empty chair and sat down and folded his hands on the table in front of him. Marcus laughed once, a short dry sound that did not reach his eyes. "Ellie, you brought the building super to a board meeting." Eleanor did not answer him. She slid a thin folder to the center of the table. Patricia opened it and began to read in her steady, minute-taking voice. She read the timestamp on the Hotel Vermont restaurant receipt from the 23rd of October at 7:42 p.m. She read the table number. She read the signature. She read the names of the 2 board members who had been seated at that table. The room did not move. Somewhere in the building a phone began to ring and was cut off. Patricia turned the page. She read the line about wanting Eleanor to understand she had no one. She read it once, in the same flat, minute-taking voice she used for motions and seconds and adjournments. The 2 board members at the table looked at their hands. 3 other names from the signal thread looked at their phones. One man at the far end of the table, a retired contractor named Howell, who had known Eleanor's father since the war, closed his eyes for a long moment and did not open them. Marcus's face did something slow. It was not anger. It was the look of a man watching a foundation move in real time and understanding for the first time that the building above him was his own. Daniel spoke for the first time. His voice was level. It was the voice he used about thermostats and ramps. "I'm not here for the licensing contract. I know what I gave up when I sold my share, and I'm not here to walk any of it back. I'm here because on the night of October 23rd, I opened the wrong door in a hotel and found a woman sitting at a table set for 12 people who did not come. I came down through the lobby on my way out, and I saw the man who had told her the board could not be there sitting at dinner 40 feet from her room. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have an opinion about your vote today. I would just like the people in this room to know what they are voting on." He sat back. The chairman of the board, a man named Ridgway, who had served under Eleanor's father for 20 years and had known Marcus since he was 6, asked for a motion to table the leadership review pending an internal review of conduct. The motion was made by Howell and seconded by a woman named Castellanos, who had been one of the names on the signal thread and who did not look at Marcus when she seconded it. The motion carried 9-2. Marcus's was one of the 2. The meeting adjourned at 10:40 in the morning. The directors filed out one at a time. 2 of them shook Eleanor's hand on the way past her chair. Most did not. Marcus left through the side door. Eleanor and Daniel sat in the boardroom after everyone else had gone. The cleaning staff would come in 20 minutes. Light came in through the tall windows on the western side of the building and fell across the table in a long pale band. Outside, the lake was the color of slate, and the ferry was crossing again, slow against the same gray wind from the morning of the patent search. She did not look at him when she spoke. "Why didn't you tell me about the patents the first day?" He thought about it. "Because you didn't come find me to be rescued. You came to find out who I was." She turned her chair to the window. She could see her own reflection faintly in the glass, and she could see his reflection beside hers, and she watched both for a moment. "Why did you sell?" He was quiet for a while. "My wife was sick. I wanted to be at the kitchen table at 6 in the morning when she came down for her tea, and I wanted to be at the door at 3 when Lily came home from school, and I could not do both those things and run a company. So, I sold the part that was the company and kept the part that was the work, and the work fits in a toolbox. I came back to Burlington because my wife's mother is here, and Lily needs a grandmother. You took a maintenance job. I took a job with regular hours that I'm good at. I have enough money. I needed a schedule." He paused. "The first 6 months after she died, I couldn't think in straight lines. A maintenance ticket is a straight line. Find the fault, fix the fault, sign the sheet. There's a man at the bottom of the building who tells you what is broken, and you go fix it, and then it isn't broken anymore. I needed that for a while. I think I needed it longer than I admitted to myself. She nodded slowly. She did not turn around. The ferry on the lake had reached the middle of the crossing. My father died in the same car, she said. I was driving. The other driver ran the light. The insurance found everyone clean. The doctors found my legs unrecoverable. Marcus found a way to be in charge of the company before the funeral. Daniel did not say he was sorry. She was grateful. He just waited. I haven't said that sentence out loud in 3 years, she said. You don't have to say it again. Once is enough. She turned the chair a few degrees back toward the window. The ferry had passed the midpoint and was visible to her now only as a smear of white against the gray. Next year on the 23rd, she said, I'm going to book that same room. 2 place settings. Would you be free? 3 settings. She turned her chair partway back toward him. Lily will be upset if she isn't invited, he said. Eleanor laughed. It was a short laugh and a quiet one, and it surprised her more than it surprised him. She had not laughed without someone billing for the privilege in a very long time. She did not try to explain that to him. She did not need to. That evening, after she had gone home and not turned on the television and not eaten dinner, Patricia sent an email. 1 line. 23 years ago your father told me that good people come through the doors you forget to lock. I had forgotten that sentence until this week. Eleanor read it twice. She did not reply. She turned off her office light on her phone, the small remote app her engineers had installed for her 2 years ago, and she stayed in her dark apartment until the moon came up over the lake. On Saturday, Daniel invited her to the house. It was a small cedar place on the eastern shore of the lake, 20 minutes north of town, set back among the white pines with a view of the water through the trees. There was a new ramp at the front door that he had built the night before. The wood was still raw at the cut ends. He had not stained it. He had built it level and true and a foot wider than code, and he had set rubber treads into the surface so the wheels would not slip in the rain. Lily was waiting at the door with her hands behind her back. She had on a sweater Eleanor recognized from the basement office, a wool cardigan 2 sizes too big. The sleeves rolled up to her wrists. She gave Eleanor a notebook, not the bird notebook, a new one, bound in heavy cardboard, the cover decorated with pressed cosmos petals under a layer of clear tape. She opened it to the first page. Cosmos. Grows wild. Hard to kill. Eleanor Whitfield. October 23rd. Underneath, in slightly different handwriting, the same words again, in a careful adult print. Daniel had added them. I think you're a kind, Lily said. You should be in the book. Eleanor took the notebook in both hands and did not say anything for a full minute. Daniel stood in the doorway with one hand on the frame and did not interrupt. Lily, satisfied with how the gift had been received, went to look at the birds at the feeder on the porch. Eleanor turned the page. There were more entries. Each entry had a name, a description, and a date. The first one in the book was Hannah Hawthorne, February 14th. Below it, in Daniel's hand, the description read, Loved Cosmos, loved them because they grew where nothing else would. Eleanor closed the notebook very gently and held it against her chest and looked at Daniel and did not say anything, and he did not say anything, and the moment passed without language. The internal review took 11 weeks. Marcus was suspended as COO pending its outcome. He did not resign. He hired an attorney from Boston and disputed every finding line by line. The matter went into the slow private machinery that family companies use to break themselves apart. Eleanor did not enjoy any of it. He was still her brother. They had ridden the same school bus for a decade. They had buried their father together. The not enjoying did not change what had to be done. She told Daniel about it on a walk along the lake path in early December. The path had been plowed clear, but a thin glaze of ice covered the boards near the rail. He walked on her left side, on the ice side, without making a thing of it. He listened without offering advice. He said one thing, near the end of the walk, when they had stopped to watch a flight of mergansers come in low across the gray water. You're not losing a brother. You lost him 3 years ago when the car turned over. You're just done pretending you didn't. She did not answer him. She reached out without looking and laid her gloved hand on the back of his wrist for the length of one slow breath. The wool of his coat was rough. He did not move, then she pulled it back. They walked on. Lily was 20 yards ahead of them with her bird notebook open, counting buffleheads on the cove. A year passed. The internal review concluded in early February. Marcus accepted a severance and a non-compete and did not contest the final terms. He moved to Connecticut in the spring. He sent Eleanor a card on her birthday at the end of October. The card said only, "I was wrong, Ellie." She read it and put it in a drawer and did not know what she felt about it, which she understood was honest. Patricia retired in May. She moved to Maine to be near her sister and sent Eleanor a postcard every month, always with a different bird on the front, none of them annotated. Eleanor pinned them in a row on the inside of her office closet door. Daniel kept the maintenance job for 9 more months, and then took a consulting role with the adaptive division 2 days a week, on his own term. The other 3 days he was at home with Lily, or he was at the Cedar House working on a workshop he was building in the back. He did not move into the city. Eleanor did not ask him to. The 23rd of October came around again. The private room on the 8th floor of Hotel Vermont was set for 3. The candles were lit. Outside the window, the lake was the color of pewter, and the maples on the far shore had gone the rust color they went the second week of October every year. Lily sat to Eleanor's left with a new bird notebook, hardbound this time, the spine sewn by hand by her father. She was counting the herons standing on the breakwater out the window and had reached 11. She was 9 now. Her hair was longer. Her 2 braids had become 1. Daniel sat to Eleanor's right. He was reading the menu the way he read everything, slowly and in order, without skipping. He was wearing a clean shirt, not the gray work shirt, but a soft blue one Lily had picked out for him at a store in town the week before. A delivery had arrived an hour earlier. A bouquet of pink cosmos from Maine, where Patricia had moved in the spring to be near her sister. There was a card. It said only, "For the table, P." Daniel leaned forward and straightened one of the candles that had tilted a 1/4 inch toward the breadbasket. The back of his hand brushed Eleanor's for half a second. Neither of them moved their hands away. The candle stayed straight. Lily, at the window, was on heron number 13 and not looking. Eleanor looked down at the table. 12 place settings the year before, 3 this year. She thought about the number for a moment and decided she preferred 3. She thought about the woman who had sat at this same table a year ago and snuffed candles between her fingers and called her driver to the side entrance, and she thought about how that woman had not died exactly but had been quietly replaced over the course of 3 weeks in October by a woman who knew the difference between being alone and sitting with 2 people. She picked up her water glass. Lily, without looking back, picked up hers. Daniel, who had been waiting, picked up his. Neither of them had been looking.